Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Growth Shift. Today, I'm excited to welcome Ashmedh Sabharwal, Chief Commercial Officer and founder of K2 Sciences, a sports and wellness product consultancy. Ashmedh, thank you for joining me today. We'll be kicking off today by learning about Ashmedh's background, then immediately exploring the biggest trends, successes, and challenges he's seeing in the market. Ashmedh, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do for K2 Sciences?
Sure. K2 Sciences essentially sits at the intersection of sports tech and med tech. And it's purposely so. My background initially was in medical devices, commercializing technologies in orthopedics, image-guided surgery, neurotechnology. And then about 12 years ago, I was a little frustrated with the FDA and the path of innovation. It tends to bottleneck at times. And I love the ability for technology to impact human health. Sports tech was starting out, and so I became very um, enamored by the idea of using technology that's not federally regulated, shall we say, but still has a methodology of impacting human health and being able to come to market faster. So for me, the iterative cycles of innovation seem to be a lot more positive. And so I sort of shifted my career from medical devices to sports tech. And again, it's really being at the intersection of med tech and sports tech to use technology to enhance human health. I began my journey in the sports tech industry just by being a consultant to companies who wanted to take a novel idea and bring it to market. I'd done it for obviously a number of companies in the medical device sector. Doing so in the sports tech sector is a little bit easier. It's regulatory obstacles to go through. And so as I started my career down this pathway, I had a lot of customers that were keen to use my services. And along the pathway, I met a gentleman named Todd Schroeder, who's a molecular physiologist at USC. And we had a great time on a project that I was doing at the time. And so we started K2 Sciences. And the idea behind that was really to merge our unique skill sets. Todd is a professor and has been at USC for 20 odd years. And as you might know, USC has and is probably the top ranked physical therapy school in the country. My background was commercial, his background is clinical. So really, we brought together our skill sets. And K2 Sciences does two things. One is we commercialize early stage ideas, things from the back of a napkin to something that's fully developed that needs to have a market entry strategy and needs to raise capital and build a team. We do all of that. On the clinical side, we can do a number of interesting things around validation studies. So oddly enough, as much as I had a distaste for the FDA's ability to sort of stifle innovation, there is definitely a need for a regulatory body in sports tech because it becomes a wild wild west when anybody can say anything about any product. The country as a whole is very litigious, so obviously companies still need to guard against potential lawsuits. One thing we do very well is we help companies take their marketing claims and add data behind it, if of course it substantiates the data. So part of what we do as K2 Science is we validate products and ideas. So if a company wants to come to market and make a marketing claim, we can do a study, and if it supports their claim, they'll have the data, so they would be in a less likely precarious situation in the event of a lawsuit. So that's what K2 Sciences does, is we actually help accelerate technology. In addition to that, because of our sort of our background and our strong platform in physical therapy, we're very enamored by the industry as a whole, and we're trying to start to create new avenues of growth for ourselves in that industry. One of the things we're doing is we're developing a software product that essentially allows physical therapists to use data more effectively and really transform the physical therapy industry from a very subjective to a very objective industry, which it really needs to do to transform itself. Because if you look at the landscape of medicine, physical therapy is a laggard in being able to adopt and use data. So one of the things we're doing is we're actively trying to assist physical therapists to use data to provide better recovery for their patients. We've also started to create our own physical therapy clinics that use the standard of care as a proof point for the physical therapists to adopt, essentially. Not only are we providing a software as a service, but we're also developing smaller clinical settings under our own umbrella to really help demonstrate the effectiveness of using technology and really, in some ways, also changing the way that physical therapy is done in terms of how it's managed, how it's built. There are a lot of constraints on the growth of physical therapy from a provider perspective, and we're trying to unshackle the industry in some ways. And so that's a bit about what we do as a company.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Back in the early days, who was your first client or customer that made you realize, okay, I think this is actually going to work? I think we have a business here.
Yeah, I think the first customer we had was a customer that was developing a novel method to heat and cool the skin without the use of ice. So typically, when you have an injury, you'd have a bucket of ice and a hose that connects to a kind of a wrap, and you basically wrap it and you walk around with that, or you can sit in a place and get that. It's a very sort of inefficient way to basically cool the body. And if you want to do contrast therapy, heating and cooling, you'd have to then get a heating pad. And when you're injured, doing all those things is rather inconvenient. The company that we were dealing with had a novel way to heat and cool without the need for ice or any other kind of a liquid. It was using thermoelectric coolers, so it's a novel device that allows you to have a more effective way to heat and cool a surface like a pad or a wrap without the need for additional things. So that was probably the first customer that we had that really told me, hey, listen, we've got something here. They came to us with just an idea. They were a university-based startup. We basically helped design their debt, brought them to market, helped them raise funding, and they've since, I think, merged with a different company. I'm being a little bit vague on the company's name because we have a number of NDAs in place, so I tend to shy away from using specific names, but I can definitely give you the idea behind it.
Sure. Thanks for that. So, in recent years, consumer demands in sports, fitness, and wellness has shifted dramatically from recovery tools to performance boosting supplements and smart devices. What major trends are you seeing in this space, and how is K2 Sciences adapting its testing and commercialization services to stay ahead?
Yeah, there's so many trends in the recovery. I think one of the big fundamental questions is data. I think we're all overrated by tons and tons of data from different providers, different devices, and there really isn't a clean way to understand what the data really means and what you should do with the data. So part of what we're doing at K2 Science is really helping our patients understand what to do with data, how to use it more effectively. And we do this not just for sort of our quote unquote physical therapy patients, but also for athletes. Because if you think about physical therapy, if you look at the entire sort of range of physical therapy, you can certainly get into it when you're very injured, but you also aspire it when you're going back to sports. In some ways, physical therapy is both a performance as well as a recovery sort of discipline in some ways. And so we're using technology and data and helping to synthesize what does that mean? How do you activate the information? So we're seeing a lot of overcrowding of data and a lot of I think confusion on the part of the customer or the clients or the business that you have. And so we're helping sort of demystify that. The other trend we're seeing quite dramatically in the industry is this idea of a third place. People want to go to a third place. And unfortunately now, the third place is the gym. And so one of the trends we're seeing quite a bit in the industry is that we have the higher level gyms like the Lights, the Time, and the Equinoxes. And then you have the lower level gyms, the $50 a month gyms essentially. And so you've got a massive number of mid-segment gyms that are now struggling to have meaning in life. Like, what is the purpose of their existence in some ways? And so what we're also doing is we're helping gyms to better formulate more effective plans for their customers using data. Because at the end of the day, with AI being in place, you don't nearly need to have a trainer telling you what to do. You can just insert the data yourself into an AI engine and tell you what to do. But I think what we're all looking for is a personal connection. We want to be in a class with other members doing things that matter, make ourselves healthier. We are also helping to sort of take technology and enable gyms that are in the mid-tier section to become more meaningful in terms of how they deliver value to their customers.
Can you give us an example of that? Like, how are they delivering value to their customers?
So one particular gym we went to was based in Irvine, California, and they needed to have a revamp. They were losing customers. They were essentially a gym where you had a trainer, a one-on-one trainer with a customer. And as trainers left, the business was sort of oscillated up and down. What we wanted to do is kind of create that into a health center. So what we did is we ended up adding a lot of technologies like force plates and dynamometers and things of that nature that gave you a baseline testing first. Established where each person is, where are the health metrics, where they're deficient in terms of their bodily function. And then we designed programming that really that's tuned to their bodies. And our goal is to basically help that become essentially a health center where everything you do is to make you stronger, but not get you injured. Most of the times when you go to a gym, they'll give you an initial sort of cursory scan of, how much body fat you have, and they assign you a program. But these programs tend to be very sort of, the word dumb is sort of a bad word to use, but they really are dumbed down versions. What you need to have is a much more exhaustive understanding of what technology data, where the human body is, where your weak points, where you're strong at, where you're weak at, and help design a program that will not make you weak or get you injured, but actually make you stronger. So many of these classes, these group fitness classes that you have, you look at the injury rates that you have from them, they're very significant and staggering. That's because you come in and you're being challenged at a level that you can't sustain. So what we're doing is we're developing sort of health-centered classes that actually evolve to the patient's needs or the person's needs or the client's needs. You can definitely have group classes where you have a collection of individuals. Knowing their fundamental sort of strengths and weaknesses allows you to create a program to cater to them. So this high level of health musculoskeletal personalization is adding a lot of benefits for this client. It's really starting to change their perception in the local economy. We're also a very technology heavy company. We basically bring in technologies from Europe or the US and we help accelerate them. So we are seeing technologies across the board things such as, something as interesting as a mushroom. So we are commercializing a new mushroom brand actually because there's massive benefit to mushrooms. But what's interesting is the quality of supplements in the area of mushrooms that you're getting in the marketplace is actually pretty bad. When you think about a mushroom, you have sort of a flowering body, and then you have the mycelium, which is grown in. The mycelium is composed of pretty, I wouldn't say toxic, but just not very good things for you. And most mushroom companies take the flowering body and also the mycelium, mix it all together and give you a mushroom extract. But the benefit of that is quite minimal. But if you look at the real flowering body of it, and you take the extract of just that, there's significant benefits. That's an example of a company that or a concept that we're actually bringing to market. We're helping a mushroom company basically come to market because of the purity of what they have. Supplements are definitely something that are getting a second look right now because they're not regulated, first of all. The sources are unknown, and the benefits are largely clinically underdeveloped. And so we have to kind of look at things that have been known for centuries to work, which is mushrooms. They don't really need clinical proof. They work for centuries of tribal knowledge. So we're basically leveraging that, but making sure that the compound is pure. So that's an example of one. We're working with a company that's really advanced in terms of adding technology to your pure shoes. We've actually working with a couple of companies in that area. So if you think about your movement in the wild, it's very hard to track how your gait's doing, how you're pressure mapping it, your gait cycles. We're working with some interesting companies that actually are putting technology in the insoles of your shoes. So as you run, walk, play sports, we know exactly where your failure rates are occurring or could occur. So in some ways, this is probably targeted to more advanced athletes, but if you think about failure points, they occur when your body is stressed and you're still doing the same movement pattern. If you're doing a cut or a hard cut in football or soccer, you're likely to fail when you're super tired. And we want to make sure that we can identify those points of weakness to strengthen you. So when you are in that point of failure mode, you're less likely to get injured. So we're working with things as simple as mushroom extracts, something as complicated to instrumented insoles that actually give you a complete pressure map of your body and how it's functioning in the wild under pressure.
It's fascinating, really fascinating.
Yeah.
Can you share a story of a product or a client that was transformed by your scientific validation and commercialization process, and what made that particularly successful?
Yeah, I mean, you'll still have to reach probably the product that helped. It's an AI coach actually for running. So it's an AI running coach, which is basically you put a pod in your chest and one on your shoe. And as you run, it's gathering information. And from that information, it's giving you live coaching. So running is an interesting sport. It's a sport that you have to get coached on the spot. You can't do after the fact coaching. So most runners tend to hire coaches that they bring on site to watch them run, and they obviously get coached from them. Whereas this coach, this AI coach essentially allows you to replicate a live coach with an AI coach. So as you're running, it'll coach you while you're running on your stride length, your trunk lean, all the facets of information that you need to actually be a better runner, your step counts, essentially how hard you're hitting the ground, etc. So it's a company we were approached with a few years ago, and we had to do some validation studies on exactly, how is it doing, is it functioning properly, and we did some internal research. We haven't published the research, but we did some internal research on it. And I think through our research, we were able to better adapt the technology to meet the needs of the customer. So it's an example where, you have a technology which is amazing, and you need to really start to validate that those metrics that they're gathering are truly the right metrics. So whether it's, evaluating in a treadmill in the wild using other technologies or camera systems, we assisted them in thinking through how to do it. And so I think that was necessary to validate the product for us and for the public.
Yeah. So when validating marketing claims for sports and wellness products, there must be a high bar to ensure both rigor and speed. What are some of the biggest challenges K2 Sciences faces when balancing that scientific integrity with the fast-paced demands of product launches?
Again, it depends upon the kind of claim you're making, right? So if it's a very complicated claim, certainly there's a need for enhanced time periods to make that assessment. And also depends upon the crowd you're looking at. What is your customer group that you're seeking to adhere to? Some companies are focused on elderly care. It becomes a little bit harder because you've got a different pool of clients with less more variability in terms of your health. If you're a company that's focused on elite athletes, it's a bit of an easier path because elite athletes tend to have a certain sort of benchmark of athleticism that you can count on. So it really depends upon the crowd, the focus group that you're going after, and what the technology actually measures. That's a big part of it. And secondly, it's the claim you're making. How broad is it? How specific is it? That all impacts it.
It's fascinating to me. As a leader focused on growth, where do you see the biggest challenges right now in scaling your business?
I think the biggest challenge in scaling a business are just finding the right people. So we assist other teams, but we also have to have a deep bench on our side. So we have a deep bench of specialists in the musculoskeletal health side, on the data science side, which is great, but it's just never enough. Our bandwidth is really constrained by our own number of employees that we have. And what makes that challenging is that we need to have individuals with very specific skill sets and very specific personality. And the two don't always marry nicely together. So if you look at the data science side, if you look at the data scientists, most of them a lot of them tend to be very focused on the data side, but not on the customer interaction side, which is a big part of it. So all our team members are sort of screened for having a high level of intellect, but also having a significant amount of ability to interact with people directly. So it's a very people and technology focused business. And so really for us, it's about having the right types of individuals in the organization. That's probably true for almost every company out there. But I think for us, it's especially important because most of our employees perform in cross-functional roles. They're never just in siloed into a data role or a selling role. We tend to have individuals that focus on both. A physical therapist, for us, is not just a physical therapist in our team. It's a physical therapist who knows data, who can do physical therapy, and who can go sell a product to another physical therapist. Every individual has to be very multifaceted in terms of how they approach the market.
Well, if you're looking ahead, where do you see K2 Sciences evolving over the next 6 to 12 months?
Wow, we've got so many interesting projects in the pipeline. I think we're going to become hopefully a company that not just does sort of technology commercialization, but we're also getting deeper into women's sports. So we actually opened our first gym. It's a volleyball facility that is combining volleyball, strength and conditioning, and data. And as you might know, volleyball is one of the fastest growing sports in North America, and it's very much leaning towards women. We are fascinated by women's sports and women's athletics because if you think about women's injuries, they tend to be 5x, 10x of men. And what's fascinating is you think about the research done on musculoskeletal health, it's all based on men. So everything you do from a programming perspective is based on a man's body. And so if you look at the rates of injury, it's significantly higher for women. So why do we not have the right programs in place to help women's bodies, cope with the stress that they are faced with? And so part of what we're excited about really is how are we going to position ourselves as being a company focused on the health of women's musculoskeletal health potentially. And volleyball gives us a quick sort of beachhead to bring ourselves into a very focused area and start to really use data and start to do training patterns and start to develop a history and a data set that supports what we're doing actually makes a difference for women's athletes. So we're super excited about being deeper into women's health.
What's a lesson you've learned through this journey and starting K2 Sciences that you wish you had known earlier?
Uh, oh man, there's so many lessons that we pick up along the way. I think one interesting one is that we've seen is that technology does not matter as much as as much as a team, shall we say. So we obviously work with a number of different companies. And I think the trend that we've always seen is that in order for a company to succeed, you have to have a great team. And it doesn't matter how good or great the technology is. It really comes down to the chemistry of the team. And as much as that sounds like such a common sense thing, it's very easy to be enamored by amazing sort of technology founders who have got amazing technology that's going to change the world. But at the end of the day, to bring the technology to market requires a lot of chemistry. And in our portfolio, we have a number of companies, and the ones that succeed the most are not the ones with the best tech. It's the ones with the best team and the best chemistry. So that's probably one of the biggest learnings that I've learned, surprisingly enough. And so we are very cautious about bringing on great tech for the sake of great tech. Because I mean, as an engineer myself, I'm enamored by great technology, and you tend to gravitate towards things that are, sound sexy, that have amazing potential. Realizing the potential is a whole different ballgame. A team chemistry, small teams, especially in small teams, it's even more important because you're going to need to pivot and shift a number of times. It's just the nature of the beast. Your initial business plan is worthless because it doesn't go anywhere. The market will kind of tell you and teach you what you need to basically do and should be doing. To do that and to be sort of dexterous enough to be able to deal with the market feedback, you have to have great chemistry in place. That's one of the biggest learnings I've taken away, to be honest.
That's super insightful. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Before we wrap up, where can our listeners connect with you, Ashmedh, and learn more about K2 Sciences?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the website, so it's www.k2sciences.com, or you can just dial me directly at ashmedh@k2sciences.com.
Okay, Ashmedh, thanks so much for joining me. And to our audience, thank you for tuning into The Growth Shift.